Good morning, Brian.
Good morning, Hayley. You look beautiful.
You do too. Thank you very much. I was just mentioning how bright and refreshed you look.
Yeah, I think it's the haircut as part of it. And the house is quiet, which feels great. No dog fights, no screaming, just us. And Ray and I love our time together.
Amazing. And you're in a wonderful part of the world too. We were speaking last week that you're in the Adirondacks.
Yes, surrounded by, hundreds of years old trees and lakes and mountains. And, but it's not that I don't think Florida is equally beautiful in its own way, but all of this oxygen is good.
It is good. It is good. And I think it's nice to come into this part of your life where you don't feel like you have to have a favorite, that you can enjoy each place for its unique beauty. And it sometimes maybe gets overwhelmed that every place you find is beautiful.
Yeah, that leads me to a couple topics that I was going to throw out, unless you had something specifically that you wanted.
No, let's go.
Well, everything I think about is anecdotal. So there are always stories that lead to observations. And many years ago, my best friend, Mary Lee, who Mary Lee Tatum, I used to talk to on the phone every night, was killed in an automobile accident. And when I flew down and just was bereft and ran into a woman before the service where I was speaking, and she said, "Oh yes, Mary Lee was my best friend." And I thought, I'm sorry. I didn't say anything, of course, but I'm sorry, Mary Lee was my best friend. and I told this story from the pulpit, and people laughed. And fast forward or back, when John and Toby, what's his name? When the book Best Little Boy in the World came out, I felt the author was stealing my story, because I was the best little boy in the world. How could he be the best little boy in the world? How can you have two best little boys in the world? And one of the things that it leads me to think about is how we don't have to, in order to be special, we don't have to have it to ourselves, right? That lots of people can have the same experience, and we don't have to argue with them about who's actually Mary Lee's best friend or who's actually the best little boy in the world, because we all can be.
We all.
Yeah. A lot of us create dramas or stories better about family and the world, and in our story, we often have found a niche for ourselves that feels unique, like maybe your birthday. Somebody comes along with the same birthday, and you think, get out of here. This is my day. My day. I don't want to know what anybody else. I'm not splitting my cake. So one can have the same sort of thinking about the relationship with the divine, that my life story, I know, has been special because of a personal, tingling relationship with Yahweh, supreme being, which a lot of people, I sent you my latest column. I know a lot of people don't believe in God, but that doesn't make it less real experience for me. But some of us who do believe can have the same sort of competition in terms of who is God's best friend, right?
Yeah. And who knows God the best?
Who knows God the best, and who's actually speaking for God?
Mm-hmm.
Who is channeling more accurately the message that's supposed to be coming through? And one of the things that I am liking, I think you heard me reference the mystical soul, the mystical sharing that all human souls have. And if you embrace that, you're less likely to feel the need to be the one, right? The favorite or the special. What do you think of all that?
I think it's a journey, which, you know, when you're talking, I'm absolutely agreeing with you. At the same time, it sounds so much easier than in real life and doing it in real life. So I think that is the journey, because it totally resonates with me when I started like really opening up and allowing myself to see that my uniqueness, my specialness was okay, and that maybe it could actually mean something to other people. I totally went on that thing of like, this is mine, this is me. I want it, like guarding it with this preciousness. And then when I used to hear other people doing similar things, or they'd already written a book, I would just be like, well, I'm no good. Immediately go into sort of that imposter thing. So I think it is a huge part of the hero's journey to move along the way of thinking that you are special in terms of only one special human on this earth and nobody else is like you and nobody can be like you, to then coming to this realization that we're all special. We're part, and we're special because we're all part of the all. Nobody got more than the other person got more of. And I feel like I've also reached sort of that point now where it's peace. It's such a peace to be able to have a recognition of everybody else's specialness and to celebrate it without feeling like I'm giving up my specialness. But it is a practice. And even now, you know, I'm saying I have more of those peaceful times, but there are absolutely times where I'm just like, oh man, like gutted because I feel like somebody's more special than me, or somebody is like realer than me or better than me. You know, there is that point of like, ugh, I'm not as good as I think I am. And it's interesting, like, is it ego or is it, you know, I think it's partly ego, but is it just one of those big lessons that we need to understand in returning to love, that we all are special?
I think it is ego. If I can give you an example, well, actually, all the examples I gave you were ego, you know, about I'm Mary Lee's best friend. I'm the best little boy in the world. I'm God's best friend. I have somebody visiting before we go back to Florida who has written a book about gay issues in the workplace. Well, that's my book. And promoting herself, she talks about people saying she's the go-to person on the issue. Well, wait a second. I'm the godfather of gay diversity training, according to the New York Times. I'm not giving up that title, even though she's doing the work now, right? She's younger, much younger, and she's got the energy to promote herself, and she's done the work on understanding the issues. So I don't have to be the only authority, and if somebody else comes along, it doesn't mean that what I did wasn't great, and it doesn't mean that I've lost all knowledge of the issue. You know, I can still be of use, even though I might not be the one the press is calling anymore. So a lot of that, I think, is ego, and it comes up a lot when you age.
I wanted to go there with that. Can we talk about, I do want to talk about the aging part of it and sort of the handing over of the baton. But first, can we talk about that sort of dagger in the heart when you realize that somebody else is doing what you thought you should be doing or what you thought was yours only? How do you feel that dagger even now, or are you able to kind of sidestep the dagger and be like, all right, no, everything's fine, chill out?
It takes practice. You know, initially, there's a, you feel it. It's like a sucker punch. And it's another subject I wanted to bring up when we finish this one, in terms of disappointment, letdown in life. But initially, the first reaction, I think this is why spirituality is work, is that the ego is strong. And the ego says, wait a second, who do you think you are? Don't you know? And then what happens also is, well, how can others have this happen? They know, they know who I am. How can they, but the reality is that things change every single second, every day, and one day, there is some comfort in knowing that one day the person is going to go through the exact same experience you just had, right? I can, we've sold this house to a nephew and niece, and the niece, has very strong feelings. And I've had to learn how to step out of the way, even though I feel like it's mine, it's my stuff, I created this. But I realized, wait, that's, the circle of life. What do they call that in The Lion King? You remember?
Yeah, the circle of,
yeah. The circle of life. So one day she's going to have to go through it. The experience of, oh, wow, that hurts. That's hard. I don't know if at that time we remember that we didn't handle it well, perhaps, when we were the one. But I think with practice, you learn how not to take it as personally, not to, and that I think it comes with age. Not that every older person has done the work. A lot of them still, are going to be very stuck in their egos. But I think the soul, the wisdom of the soul, the whispering of the soul gets louder and says, shh, you're fine. You've had your day. You've had your turn. Yeah, but what about more turns? I want more turns. Well, you know what? The next thing you do is going to be different. It's going to be, and you may think it's even better, but it's not going to be that. And you had that, and now it's time for you to have a different experience, but you're never going to have the new experience if you don't let go of the old one. If you cling, you're lost.
And I think if you cling, you also shut down the possibility of so many other wonderful things happening too. You're just so focused on this is what I want, and your ego then is completely driving. But you mentioned such a wonderful term, the whispers of the soul. And I think the practice isn't trying to dodge the sucker punch. It's not trying to, behave the best you can in those situations. I think the practice is quietening so you can hear the whispers of the soul, so you can hear your soul say and tell you what to do.
And Hayley, in order to do that, and I don't do it enough, you have to set aside time.
You have to.
You can't just stick it in between making dinner and emptying the dishwasher. You have to say, it's important enough to me, just like some people prioritize going to the gym. This is important enough that you have to set aside time to do it. And I'm not good at that. And maybe that's what this is about. Maybe this is about creating a better practice.
And I think for me, that practice is, there's times where I will be spend the day where I'm probably 4 hours in some kind of meditative state, sitting still, being still, and learning, listening to my soul and being taught by my soul. And then there's 3 or 4 days where I don't even sit. But in those 3 or 4 days, I notice that when I'm doing the dishes, I'm very present with the dishes and what it means to be able to be doing dishes. And Thich Nhat Hanh was a wonderful teacher of that experience. So I think it's, I think sitting quietly and learning to be still and quiet and to allow your mind to start learning how to be still with you is critical. And it is one of the most important foundations of creating a practice. You can also find that stillness in the things that you're doing.
Mm-hmm. I find it in writing.
Yeah.
When I write, the channel of inspiration is open. And, sometimes I'll look at what I've written and think, wow, where'd that come from? but it's because I have surrendered to the experience.
And the word there, surrendered, is so important, because I was listening to Michael Singer this week. He has an interesting podcast. And he wrote The Untethered Soul, the Surrender Experiment.
Mm-hmm.
And he was talking about sort of debunking a lot of the myths around meditation. And he was saying, you know, even when you're in meditation and you're saying a mantra, the mantra is still doing, you're still doing something. Even when you're doing the block breathing, when you're counting the inhale and you're counting the exhale, you're still doing. So it's a matter of being fully present and surrendering to the doing where those moments of quietness come. And you'll find, I'm sure, that when you're writing, it is completely quiet.
Yeah.
Surrender is a full surrender. I've taught meditation quite a bit in my career so far. And one of the first things I say is throw out these ideas that meditation has to be sitting, lotus position, not moving. Because I encourage people to, when you're writing, when you're in your passion, you are in a meditative state, you are open, you are in the flow, you are listening to the whispers of the soul at that point in time.
Yeah, and so going back to the original point of competing and feeling that you're the only one, to realize that many voices can be going on at the same time. Many people can be meditating at the same time, connecting with the same source, coming to the same conclusions. One of the things I'm loving about this process that I'm going through of publishing or getting ready to publish the book on being gay and gray is that I've connected with other gay men who are on the spiritual path. Actually, one we've already had on the show, and the other one we're going to have on soon. Bill Glenn and Toby Johnson, and I've loved the dialogue going back and forth with them about what do they believe? Do you believe in God? Do you believe in an afterlife? Do you believe in the migration of the soul? To have the opportunity to talk to other people who have worked as hard as I have on understanding is really a wonderful experience.
And I think that's the community, we're creating now. And it's such a wonderful segue because, well, before we segue into that, I just wanted to sort of add one more thing about the competition. I have found that that feeling of competition is the worst when you begin something new, when you start something new. And you don't really have the confidence in yourself. And then on the other side, I've also found that when we start to allow that competitiveness to be a disappointment and to be discouraging, because now we don't think that we're any different or we have nothing to add. I think that's also when our soul is saying you can be different, but you still have something to add.
Mm-hmm. And also when you choose to leave, step away from your throne, your crown as the best in this particular area, and venture in at a later age to something completely new, you have these feelings of inadequacy, and you're tempted to run back to the old because that's where you felt, your ego felt most inflated and special.
It was comfortable.
It was, and you feel like, okay, I'm 73. Can I coast, the rest of the way in?
No.
Yeah. Well, you can, but then I think you quit growing.
I agree with you. I think you can coast. You quit growing and you're coasting. I think it's a personal decision for everybody. And if you want to be fully engaged in life, it does require that sacrifice of growing, of leaving your comfort zone just as it gets comfortable. That's about time to do something different now.
Well, when we began, you said I looked like I was refreshed. And, some of that can be from doing the hard work
Mhm.
of confronting feelings, tough feelings, hard feelings, grasping, clinging, feeling inadequate, accepting aging, putting things in perspective. That is hard work, but it creates a vitality, right?
Do you think it creates joy too?
Pardon?
Does it create joy for you too?
It creates joy in knowing that I didn't fall down the hole and not be able to get out, right?
Mhm.
They tell that the story to help you make decision about walking down the street, falling in the hole, walking down the street, falling in the hole, and then finally you learn to walk down a different street. And so I think part of the joy comes from realizing that there is another street
Mhm.
that you can walk down and completely avoid with and let go, even if it means that you are seen as having lost the battle by other people. It's not a matter of losing because you let go of the rope.
Yeah, and for me, one of my greatest lessons has always been the only thing that matters is my relationship with God, or my relationship with the source, in terms of, am I the only thing I should be worried about, the only person I should be worried about, the only measure of how well I'm doing is God.
Mm-hmm. And God and you are inseparable.
We're inseparable. I've been learning a lot from my elders this week, which is sort of a segue into the community and the aging. But she was this lady was sharing her story about part of her path had become born again Christian and to go back into the church. And she's a channel. And when she was in the church, she completely got into the energy and ended up channeling. And she kind of came out of the channel and everybody was quiet and wanting to stay away from her, thinking that she was like the devil. And she sort of left the church and she had a chat with God and she was like, God, I can't go back to church. And, if that means I'm going to hell, then I'm going to hell. And she was like, God responded back to her, well, then I'm coming to hell with you because I'm part of you and you're part of me.
Mm-hmm.
And I listened to that and I was like, those little things that anecdotes that you hear and then they just go straight into the heart and you're like, cha-ching, lesson complete.
Yes. Yeah. The personal stories from one's own life used as examples of connectedness.
Yeah.
If you're willing to listen to it. Yeah. If the person can tell the story, but it can be lost.
It can be lost. And for me, a lot of my human teachers are older than me. I connect very well with people that are a good 15, 20 years older than me. And I learn a lot from them because of their life experience. And I do feel like it's an invaluable part of society to be able to continue to learn from our elders, as we've done, through the generations of civilization. Elders have been such an important part of the community, which right now I don't think we're paying that much attention to anymore. And I feel like it is a loss, and hopefully it will turn around eventually. But I think my question here would be, do you feel that the elders have more valuable information than the young ones? Is it better to listen to an elder than a young person?
I don't think it should have to be a choice. Out of the mouths of babes, come truths that we've forgotten or haven't seen. But I do believe that and we often don't listen to children. Children are to be seen and not heard. That That's why they called the whole generation before baby boomers the silent generation, because that was the code at home. You're seen and not heard. But so children are hushed often, and sometimes they have really important things to say. But seniors, it was either the governor or the lieutenant governor of Texas that when COVID started said, the seniors ought to just die, so that we can
anyway.
keep the stores open. So, the whole generation of people over 65 were expendable in that person's mind. And one of the things that I hope that people understand is, boy, you're passing up.
And amazing.
A lot of information, even if it's just this incredible family recipe for whatever, applesauce, that you've never bothered to ask the person to recite so you could write it down, and they die and it's gone, right? Well, they have so many more things to share than just the applesauce recipe. Like, how do you deal with the death of a beloved?
Yeah. Love. I mean,
how do you survive? How do you survive when all your friends are dying?
How do you survive a world war?
Or the depression. I mean, it's getting past the depression, but how do you survive loss? Ray and I are aware that we have experienced a significant loss because of loaning our money to friends who can't pay it back. But you start to hear more and more people say, well, we had a similar experience. And so if you're able to come through that and not see yourself as a victim, right, but know how to put your life back together and move on, that's sure worth something to be listening to. If you're in your 20s, 30s, 40s, before you experience the same thing.
You don't have to. And I think that's the whole point of the teachings here and the wisdom is that, listen, because it's going to help you avoid a lot of heartache, a lot of pain if you listen to the help that is coming towards you. And I do, very much believe in, the lips of wisdom are sealed until the student is ready to hear. Mm-hmm. But I have seen too that, and my personal, in the work that I do, has been, let me teach, let me tell you about my experience in the hope that it will help you, not feel alone, but also maybe you won't have to go through the things that I went through. You'll find a better way of doing it.
One example.
Might realize that, here's the road with the potholes, let me go down this road.
One example of this, and stop me if I've already told you this, but I got an email from the people who did from Slate. Did I tell you this story? Well, Slate magazine is in the process of releasing an excellent podcast on the year 1977, and lots of very interesting things happened in that year. One of the things that happened was Anita Bryant and her campaign against gay rights in Dade County, Florida. And, I had written an open letter to Anita Bryant that the New York Times Sunday magazine said they wanted, and they sat on forever and ever and ever until they didn't want it anymore. And so Slate had me spend 2 hours with them on the phone, telling them all about the night I wrote the article, the night we lost, and I went into the back porch of the house and I wrote this art. They had me read, from the article, the letter to Anita Bryant. And I was so excited. And then they sent it and said, we thank you so much for all your help. You're not in it, but we do thank you at the end of the podcast. Well, I was let down because I was excited that I was able to tell my story in my own voice in this new venue. But having had the experience of being let down in my 30s or my late 20s with the Anita Bryant article prepared me. And so, and that prepared me also to give the advice to my friend, are you happy without the movie? It's all about that. Toby Johnson, who's going to be coming on in early August, said, his book, he wrote a fiction book that I sent you, was supposed to become a movie, and it didn't. And the experience of having letdown in life, when you really think you're about to knock it out of the park and everyone's going to see it, and then it doesn't happen. How do you pick yourself up from that and move on? And if you haven't been through it before, you think it's the end of the world. And it's not.
It's not. It's just the beginning.
But you have to be willing to listen to somebody who's been through it in order to know that you can get through it.
Yeah.
Right?
I've found that a lot of the guides in my path have been amazingly powerful people that when I listen to them, I'm like, how come I'm not seeing you on these massive stages? How come I'm not seeing you at these community centers or these, why am I not seeing you in the media, but I'm seeing these other people? And it's sort of it's very interesting for me because my greatest teachers have been incredibly powerful, but lesser known. They're very much in this undercurrent of, they're not hiding, they're not secrets, they're just not out there in that way. And it's an interesting sort of...
You have to make peace with that.
Yeah.
If you are one of those people, and there, your ego says to you, you should be, sitting in that chair on that talk show. You know more than they do about the subject. And that's a great life lesson of saying, while I hope the message that I have gets out to a lot of people, and it would help to be on that national talk show, that's not happening. And I've got to be okay with that. And I've got to keep doing the work and trust that maybe someone I'm talking to and helping will be in that chair. Right?
Interesting. And I think, again, on the journey, it's something that clearly comes up with me quite a bit. And it seems like with you, where this paradox of why them and not me, or this other person that is. And it's interesting because I always come back to the question. So are my teachers better than that person who's on a stage and is now a multimillionaire? And I do have to sit with that because, of course, I think my teachers are brilliant because they connect with me. And I'm just if you could all just listen to what she said, it helped me so immensely.
Well, the multimillionaire part is the ego, right?
It's the ego.
It's the world saying that you have value because the richer you are, the better you must be. Well, that's not true. And we know that's not true. But you have to learn that for yourself. Yeah.
An interesting sort of thing that hits me on the forehead is very early on I learned that, a truly spiritual person, a shaman, anybody that is on that path will never say that they're a shaman. They will always just be no, I'm just doing what I'm meant to do. And so when I started seeing that, it became very popular to actually call yourself a shaman on your business card. Or, I've learned that there are now these things called corporate shamans. And I always sit there going, one of my paradoxes is always okay, who's on the better path here?
and you can let go of it. It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. Everybody's on a path to the same thing. the paths just are all different for
And,
different.
and Hayley, the person who's making the multi-million dollars, or who is constantly in demand for talk shows, that can be pulling from their serenity.
Yeah.
It can be an obstacle now to them being authentic teachers, because they have gotten themselves so wrapped up in the reward, as opposed to you or me or someone else who, not that we would reject the offer, we'd love to be invited, but it's okay that we're not.
Yeah.
And we have to think about the possibility that had we might not be able to be doing the good work with ourselves that we're doing right now.
And I think that is my big thing too, because I'm always like, all right, when you look at those people and the entourages that they have them and people telling them where to go, I always come back and I'm like, where's your moment of peace?
Yeah, I would think, Hayley, if I was your age, I was you, I would want to continue to build a practice of people who appreciated the gifts that you have, making enough money to live comfortably, but not wanting more, because it creates an insatiable appetite. There's always more.
Do you feel in your experience that you've reached that, you've had moments, because you've had a very big career, where, like to your point, the press was calling you. In those moments, did you feel like you wanted more, or could you feel yourself kind of going like, okay, this is getting a little much?
I never felt that it was getting a little much, because I didn't think that much about it. When I was young, when I was in my 20s and 30s, and we had icons in civil rights movements like Martin Luther King Jr. And I came out in the gay movement. My young romantic mind imagined that I would emerge to that role of being, the leader, a prominent leader. Well, I'm a leader still for a certain group of people, but my name's unknown to a lot of, the majority of younger people who are out there making decisions. Again, it's their turn. I don't think my work is done. I think I have more to do right now. And I'm focusing on the aging issue, which is, I think, what I'm supposed to be doing, which means I'm not focusing on some other issue, right? I accepted a long time ago that I might, and it was comforting, that I might not be even a footnote in the history of the gay community, that whoever writes the history, and the historian is the one who, gets last word, right? If they don't know of you or respect what you did, you don't get included in the story. And so, at least in the text of, or the record of what happened, you're not the prominent person you earlier thought you might be. But in reality, you're huge in the life of some people. And that's enough. I mean, it's enough to know that I've made a big difference in the lives of some people.
When you started out and becoming more vocal and more sort of visible, did you have a moment where you were like, all right, I'm going on this journey, this is how I want to be throughout this journey? Or did you kind of just wing it?
I winged it. My spirituality was an important component of my daily life, at least in terms of belief in God and a belief in service. and a belief in the mandate of the Sermon on the Mount. And I was enriched by other spiritual writings, all the people you and I both, names we would both know and both have read. But I went from thing to thing to thing to thing to thing. And what I say to people, I just kept saying yes. Would you like to do a video? Yeah, sure. Would you like to do a book? Yeah, sure. But I didn't sit down and say, okay, now let's plot this out.
Mm-hmm.
Got to get the book first, then you got to get the video out, and let's hope for a movie. So let's court the people who make the movie. There was none of that, none of it. The corporate was completely out of the blue. They found me, asked me, I made up the workshop, did it. It was a success. I had no idea where it was going. I had no idea that it was going to, mushroom into this huge global, and the people who are now doing it, probably know my name, but at least the ones who are doing the training, but I'm not on the scene anymore. And I'm not struggling to be on the scene.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not working behind the scenes in order to, get myself appointed to a board or get an award or be invited to speak at a conference. There are people who actually are out there with agents pressuring others to invite him to, not me, but invite her to speak. You need to have her speak. That's not been part of my life. And I'm glad for it. Because if it had been, I would be disappointed that it hadn't ended up with more, right? That
I probably wouldn't happen to you because I'd have to go through agents and everybody else.
Yeah. We wouldn't know each other, right?
We wouldn't.
But that's not me. Me says yes to anyone who writes and says, can we talk? Anybody. Can we meet for coffee? The only thing I don't do is they say, well, I want to meet Ray too. No, I'm sorry. Ray says I can do anything I want as long as I don't include him. So, and that's another thing, Hayley. If you're single, you have a lot more freedom to say yes to anything. And, if you're in a relationship and you prioritize the relationship over everything else, the relationship takes precedence over everything else, then you end up saying no to lots of things that might have put you more on people's radars. Well, that's fine. I have something to offer. If you want to read it, I think you'll get something out of it. But I've actually made most of my books and videos free.
Mm-hmm.
That was another turning point for me, is not waiting for the royalty check. Is that, okay, you know what? I got enough from that book. Now you guys can all have it free. And I had to buy it back in order to get to do that. But so I kind of like that pattern. I like giving away stuff.
And sort of segueing into the community now, because you are in a community that is very similar minded, yeah?
It depends on what community you have in mind, because it's not the gay community. The LGBT community is so mixed,
I would say the community that you directly are in the middle of and a part of. So
well, I create community wherever I go. It's not intentional. It's just what I do. Ray and I had everyone in our neighborhood in for a cookout. No one had done that ever for them. And I'll know everyone in the grocery store, by name, and they'll know me by name. And I don't do it so that others think, oh, who's he? I do it because I care about the person who's stocking the vegetable shelf. What's your name? Hey, Sarah, how are you? How's the little one? Great. So that's my community. Now I find myself, and so you and I are in community.
Yeah.
Right? That happened. And the community got bigger because Ray got involved, right? And then Roberto got involved.
Bill Glenn's involved.
Bill Glenn's involved, so it gets added. And the fact is we're all connected.
Mhm.
We don't intersect each other's lives very often. I don't mean you and me. I mean the average person walking down the street. I have a connection to them, but we haven't made it yet, right? I start with a smile and how you doing? And whether they respond or not is going to matter to the building of community. But so what specifically? I mean, I have a community of people who read what I write, on Facebook and in Self-Florida Gay News, or a community of people who follow me in my books. I have, COVID has impacted community a lot.
Mhm.
I had a spiritual community that I sort of looked forward to being around. But who did you have in mind when you said community?
For me, community is the people that I'm directly in touch with and the people that I'm directly speaking with in a week, in a month. So it's sort of the people that I have regular contact with that directly sort of influence my life, and I may directly influence their life. And then from that little circle, there's sort of these outer ripples of sort of bigger communities where it's either the spiritual community, the Mayan community for me, my corporate community, my French community. There's all these little smaller communities. But for me,
Right.
It's that primary community where on a weekly basis or, even on a monthly basis, they're the regulars that I am in touch with. And it really sort of the root of community was your email to me the other day where you said you matter to me, you mean a lot to me. And I read that and I was just like, holy moly, girl, look where you're at. This is your community now. This is what you're a part of now. And it is still hard for me to receive that without thinking that. I always look, I'm like, oh, you mean that person.
Mm-hmm. Or when you really get to know me, I won't really be part of your community.
Or what do you want from me?
Right. People do that. We used to, we offered people Cokes all the time or a glass of water. Well, what do you want from me?
Yeah.
What I want is to know that you're not thirsty.
Like, please take it. And I had a moment where I was just like, this is when you talk about that sort of enough, where you stop chasing and just surrender into, what, if this is it, I'm good, I'm happy. And I was like, everything at that moment, it was a very big sort of spiritual aha moment, I guess. Or
good.
Moment, because it was just like everything that I'd done where I thought I'd given up so much and lost so much. And it was that sort of, what you're talking about. You have these really hard lessons where it's really tough to sit with those feelings, really tough to not just go sit at the bottom of the barrel and feel sorry for yourself. But at the end of that comes something greater, bigger, more love, more joy, more peace. And it was that moment of like, this is why you do the things you do. This is why you believe. So,
I'm glad
now, and I'm just like, I'm so blessed. I'm so blessed. And I have to be careful because a lot of the time I do live by myself and I do spend a lot of time alone. And there are times where I'm like, I just need somebody to enjoy all of this with. And that was a very, flick on the forehead saying, you asked for it, it's right here. You're enjoying life with all of these people that are supporting you, but also have that same zest for life, that we now have something in common. When we speak about joy, we're like, oh my God, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. Your heart, I talk about my heart jumping, in recognition when someone says something or that, oh my God, that's it. That's exactly what I believe. That's who I am. I'm glad. Thank you for telling me that. My intention was just to let Hayley know what I think she already knows, but put it in words so that she has the reminder. And we need reminders.
We do. And I think, that was also sort of like, okay, I've really got to do this more to let people know. And I think we, hopefully can inspire more people to do it. Don't assume that they know. It's nice to assume. I think it's a wonderful step, but go that extra mile, be courageous, and just say, you know what, you mean a lot to me, and it means a lot that you're walking this earth right now.
Did I already tell you about our celebration of Ray's birthday here?
Yes, with the family and everybody standing up.
Yeah. Did you read that, or did I tell you it?
You told me about it.
Did I? Yeah, it was very moving.
Ray also told me about it too, and how touched he was. And I think the two of you are such massive blessings in my life. I mean, blessings feels like such a small word to describe how much joy both of you bring to me. It's just, I think, how wonderful to do that while you're alive.
I was, I always have thought that, and continue to, that everyone thinks what I, has the same thoughts I do. They have the same experiences that I do. So when I wrote on Facebook about asking the nephews and nieces to say to Ray things that they would otherwise say at his funeral, but say it now that he's alive, which I try to do all the time, a bunch of people said, "Oh my God, that's we ought to do that." And I thought, yeah, but you're not doing it, because we do need to do it. We need to tell people what they mean to us, even if the relationship changes. We've had best friends that we no longer are in touch with. Some stupid thing happened. Who knows? You can't even find the end of the string to, how did that happen? But that doesn't mean you don't still care about them.
Mm-hmm.
And I have actually written to people with whom we've lost touch and said, I want you to know that, and I would do it out of the blue, usually a message on Facebook or an email if I still have their address. I want you to know that even though we're not still talking, I still love you, and our time together meant the world to me. We were really, really good friends, and I'm grateful for that experience. And then you usually hear nothing, because the person, well, what is it you want? This person, are you trying to take things back the way they were? No, I know it's over with. I know that it's not. You've got new friends. We've all gone in different directions. I just want you to know, if you ever sit there thinking about it, I want you to know that I'm thinking that what we shared was wonderful. It was great, and it made a huge impact on my life.
I think that's definitely my goal now, is to make it very clear how much my community means to me in all of the different aspects. And it's wonderful that I learned from your generation. I also learned from that younger generation too. I have a lot of clients that are 19, 20, 21, and my goodness, they throw around the word love.
Really? That's great.
They send messages to me like, I love you, thank you for everything. And I'm just like, what? Because at 20, I wasn't doing that. I was part of that generation where you don't throw around the word love.
It scares people.
It is a scary word.
I use it a lot. When let's say you wrote me for the first time, right? An email just saying, Brian, I read your book and I just want you to know it helped a lot. So I write back and thank you. Always, I'll write back. And usually I'll sign off first time, with best wishes. You write me back and my response is with warm regards, right? And then it's with love. And then it's love. Because by the fifth email, you've both done enough work, right? But that word love scares people.
It does.
Well, what do you mean by that?
And like,
are you interested in me? No. Love is not doesn't have to be sexual. This is about, and that's why, Hayley, on Facebook, every single comment, I'll put a heart. People commenting on my stuff, I put a heart. Well, does that mean you agree with what that person said? Because, I would never think you'd agree with that. No, I'm saying I love the fact that you stepped forward and shared, took a moment and shared with us. That's all it says, It's a heart. It's a heart.
Emojis are such a funny story for me, the emojis. And it's interesting how, all of my life lessons, I now look back on, I'm like, that was hilarious. I have the benefit of looking back now, but all of them have such a hilarious note to them. And the emojis, I, started a relationship with a European, and he used to send like emojis, like heart emojis, and like the little face blowing kisses or surrounded in hearts. And I'll just be like, why? Like, we've only kind of just met. Like, why are you sending me these? And he's like, I send it to everybody. I'm like, you send this to everybody? It's what we do. We share the love. And I was like, you can't do that in America. Everybody will think that you're like really being forward and like you've already jumped to love, and now I have to deal with your obsession with me.
Yeah, but that's our problem, not his.
That lesson of my sort of like, you're in the wrong here, dude. You've really got to turn your emojis down.
Right.
Now, every emoji that I receive and every emoji I send is either a heart or there's a heart on every one of them. And I'm just look back and I'm like, hilarious. And wonderful too, that to be in that space of like catching up. And, I want you to know that you made me feel love, and I'm sending you love, and a heart's the easiest way of doing that.
I do that. I don't use emojis very much. The heart is the only one I use, but I send happy birthday messages, to anyone on Facebook. But before I do it, I look at their profile and just to see, okay, they have to be a certain kind of person, or I wouldn't have accepted their request to be a friend. I'm not going to take someone who's hostile but I look through their post, one, to see if they're still alive or because a lot of them, or are they still on Facebook? But I'll say one of two things. I'll either say, thank you for the abundant goodness in your heart and in your life, right? And these are people who I don't know, 99% of the people on Facebook, I don't really know. I mean, I've said yes to people. I don't know who they are. I mean, I know enough about them to say yes to them, but they're not friends. You don't have 5,000 friends. But I say it to them because everybody does have goodness in their heart. And if you affirm it, you're watering the plant. Sometimes people will be shocked to say, well, why would he say that to me? Where's the goodness in my life? Well, I'm not looking for it. I'm just wanting you to know that it's there. Or I say, depending upon what I see as your posts and your life work, I'll say, thank you for your bold life of generous, loving kindness. And one person wrote and said, I cried for a week after reading your birthday message. I don't want to just write happy birthday, which tons of people do, just happy birthday. I want them to get a message that affirms that who they are and the goodness of their life is being recognized, and there's gratitude for it. And if they're not that kind of person, it might engender kindness. Right?
So special. I'm so happy that you're walking the earth today.
Oh, that's a very sweet thing to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Not only to me, but I think you're a blessing to all of your communities. And, just you walking with us really does show how special we each are.
Well, that's my intention, seriously, is to make sure that every single person I encounter feels seen, with gratitude. And you try to remember their name if you can, because that's, who they are. But also something about them that they've told you so that you can bring it up so that, oh my God, you know, he remembers, he cares. I'm not just putting stuff in this bag for him. You know, he's talking to me on the way to the car. I'm only 18, you know, he's got gray hair. What does he have? Is he coming on to me? If they think that, then that's their journey.
Yeah.
Right. Because, you know, I have no interest in them whatsoever.
Maybe your next book after the one you're working on now should be How to Create a Community of Love.
Yeah. Well, that could be, I don't know how that could fill a whole book, but
I think it would be a full book.
yeah, you think? Yeah.
Yeah, I think it would be a very sweet book.
How are we doing on time? I never
We're
looked.
actually out of time, so I think it's a
Are we?
wonderful note to end on.
Well,
Yeah.
Hayley, thank you. Thank you for your friendship
Thank you, Brian.
and for our time. I won't see you next week.
I'll see you next week, but we will still post a video next week because we have one in the queue, and then we have this one, and then we'll be back the week after that.
Good. I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful week.
Thank you. You too. Enjoy the Adirondacks and nature.
I love you, Hayley.
I love you too, Brian. Wonderful. Bye.
Bye-bye.